The Talking Pot, a Danish folktale, retold by Virginia Haverland, illustrated by Melissa Sweet. A man and his wife were once living in a small cottage, the smallest and poorest hut in the whole village. They were so poor that they often lacked even their daily bread. They had been obliged to sell nearly everything they had, but had managed somehow to keep their only cow. At length, they decided that the cow too must go, and the man led her away, intending to take her to market. As he walked along the road, a stranger hailed him, asking if he intended to sell the animal, how much he would take for it. "I think," answered he, "that 100 crowns would be a fair price." "Money I cannot give you," said the stranger, "but I have something which is worth as much as 100 crowns. Here is a pot which I'm willing to exchange for your cow." And he showed the man an iron pot with 3 legs and a handle. "A pot!" exclaimed the cow's owner. "What possible use would that be to me when I have nothing to put in it? My wife and children cannot eat an iron pot. No, money is what I need and what I must have." While the 2 men looked at each other and at the cow and the pot, the 3-legged thing suddenly began to speak. "Just take me," it said. The poor man thought that if the pot could speak, no doubt it could do more than that. So he closed the bargain, took the pot, and returned home with it. When he reached his hut, he went first to the stall where the cow had been tied, for he was afraid to appear before his wife at once. He tied the pot to the manger, went into the hut, and asked for something to eat. He was hungry from his long walk. "Well," said his wife, "did you make a good bargain at the market? Did you get a good price for the cow?" "Yes," he said, "the price was fair enough." "That is well," she returned. "The money will help us a long time." "No," he sighed, "I received no money for the cow." "Dear me," she cried, "what did you receive then?" He told her to go and look in the cow's stall. As soon as the woman learned that the 3-legged pot was all that had been paid him for the cow, she scolded and abused her husband. "You are a great blockhead," she cried. "I wish I myself had taken the cow to market. I never heard of such foolishness." Thus she went on and on. "But clean me, and put me in the fire," suddenly shouted the pot. The woman opened her eyes in wonder And now it was her turn to think that if the pot could talk, no doubt it could do more than this. She cleaned and washed it carefully and put it on the fire. I skip, cried the pot. How far do you skip? Asked the woman. To the rich man's house, to the rich man's house, it answered, running from the fireplace to the door, across the yard and up the road as fast as its 3 short legs would carry it. The rich man, who had never shared anything with the poor, lived not very far away. His wife was baking bread when the pot came running in and jumped up on the table. "Ah!" exclaimed the woman, "isn't this wonderful? I need you for a pudding that must be baked at once." Thereupon she began to heap good things into the pot: flour, sugar, butter, raisins, almonds, spices, and so on. And the pot received it all with a good will. At length the pudding was made, but when the rich man's wife reached for it, intending to put it on the stove, tap, tap, tap went the 3 short legs, and the pot stood on the threshold of the open door. "Dear me, where are you going with my pudding?" cried the woman. "To the poor man's home," replied the pot, running down the road at a great speed. When the couple saw the pot skipping back to them with the pudding in it, they rejoiced. The man lost no time in asking his wife whether the bargain did not seem to be an excellent one after all. Yes, she agreed. She was pleased and contented. Next morning, the pot cried again. I skip, I skip." "How far do you skip?" they asked. "To the rich man's barn," it shouted, running up the road. When it arrived at the barn, it hopped through the doorway. "Look at that black pot," cried the men who were thrashing wheat. "Let us see how much it will hold." They poured a bushel of wheat into it, but it did not seem to fill. Another bushel went in, but there was still more room. When every grain of wheat had been given to the pot, it seemed capable of holding still more. But as there was no more wheat to be found, the 3 short legs began to move, and when the men looked around, the pot had reached the gate. "Stop, stop!" they called. "Where do you go with our wheat?" "To the poor man's home," replied the pot, speeding down the road and leaving the men behind, dismayed and dumbfounded. The poor family were delighted. The poor people were delighted. The wheat they received was enough to feed them for several years. On the third morning, the pot again skipped up the road. It was a beautiful day. The sun shone so brightly that the rich man had spread his money on a table near his open window to allow the sunshine to clear the mold from his gold. All at once, the pot stood on the table before him. He was counting his coins as wealthy men like to do, and although he could not imagine where this black pot had come from, he thought it would make a fine place to store his money. So he threw in one handful of coins after another until the pot held them all. At that very moment, the pot jumped from the table to the windowsill. "Wait!" shouted the man. "Where do you go with all my money?" "To the poor man's home," returned the pot, skipping down the road with the money dancing within it. In the center of the poor man's hut it stopped, and when its owners saw the unexpected treasure, they cried out in rapture. "Clean me and wash me," said the pot, "and put me aside." Next morning the pot announced again that it was ready to skip. "How far do you skip?" asked the man and his wife. "To the rich man's house." So it ran up the road again, never stopping until it reached the rich man's kitchen. The man happened to be there himself this time, and as soon as he saw the pot, he cried, "There is that pot that carried away our pudding, our wheat, and all our money. I shall make it return what it stole." The man flung himself upon the pot, but found that he was unable to get off again. I skip," shouted the pot. "Skip to the North Pole if you wish," yelled the man, furiously trying to free himself. But the three short legs moved on, carrying him rapidly down the road. The poor man and his wife saw it pass their door, but it never thought of stopping. For all that I know, it went straight on, carrying its burden to the North Pole. The poor couple were now rich. They thought often of the wonderful pot with the three short legs that skipped so cheerfully for their good, but it was gone, and they have never seen it since. Here's a recipe for you to enjoy from the magic talking pot.